Welcome, everyone, to Men the Mass Media Group. Hope everyone is doing well on this Thanksgiving Day, giving thanks. Today, we're going to be looking at a great ancestor, Bass Reeves, a Black American freedman hero. But before we actually get into the reading, I want to go ahead and do a little housekeeping as usual. So if you have yet to go watch the documentary Reparations Now, please go watch it at reparationsnowdoc.com. That's reparationsnowdoc.com. Greatly appreciate it. And as well, if you haven't been following the California Reparations Task Force final reading report, shout out to the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. That's mostly on Thursdays, if not every Thursday. You can go to the YouTube channel at CJEC-official to check out the final Reparations California Task Force report. And that's once again live at CJEC YouTube channel. So go check them out there. And as well, Sundays right here on Even the Mass Media Group. Actually, not this Sunday because, it's going to be holiday weekend. So we're going to take the time out off. But go ahead, check us out at Even the Mass Media Group, Sundays at 10 a.m. Road to Reparations, the community show, where we're going over legislation and also the legislators right here on Even the Mass Media Group, the Road to Reparations right here in California, community show. All right. So since we got that out the way, we're going to be actually talking about, once again, Bass Reeves, a Black American freedman hero. Actually, let's get into it. I'm going to switch up the music just a tad bit. Even though I appreciate the theme music in the background, we're going to slow it down just a little bit. All right. Let's see. I think the volume's good on that. Yep. All right, so let's get into it. All right, who's Bass Reeves? Bass Reeves was born on July 1838 and transitioned sometime around January 12, 1910, was a former enslaved person turned American lawman. He was among the first Black deputy U.S. Marshals in the first west of the Mississippi River. He worked mostly in the Indian Territory. Reeves was born into slavery in Crawford County, Arkansas in 1838. He was named after his grandfather, Bass Washington. Reeves and his family were owned by Arkansas state legislator William Still Reeves. When Bass was 8, about 1846, William Reeves moved to Grayson County, Texas, near Sherman in the Peters colony. All right. It appears plausible that Reeves was kept in bondage by William Still Reeves' son, Colonel George R. Reeves, a Texan sheriff, legislator, and one-time Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives. When the American Civil War began, George Reeves joined the Confederate States Army, forcing Bass to go with him. It is unclear how and exactly when Bass Reeves escaped, but at some point during the Civil War, he gained his freedom. He eventually was freed by the 13th Amendment's abolition of slavery in 1865. As a freedman, Reeves returned to Arkansas and farmed near Van Buren. I'm going to say that, repeat it one more time. As a freedman, Reeves returned to Arkansas and farmed near Van Buren. Thank you for joining, family. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time. You could be anywhere, but you're right here getting this information. Appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming. So let's continue. Now, I don't know if anyone has been watching the series Lawmen of Bass Reeves. It's like it was, or it is, or was. I don't know. I'm not personally watching it, but if anybody else is watching it, put it in the comments. Let us know how it is. Just haven't had time, and I don't even know if I'm gonna watch it, but I might. We'll see. But it's produced by 101 Studios, Bosque Ranch Productions, MTV Entertainment Studios, Yari Film Group, and Yoruba Saxon Productions, and it's distributed by Paramount Studios. Now, looks like the main character is played by David Oyelowo. Oyelowo or Lowo? Sorry, brother, if I mispronounced your name. I believe he is not a Black American descendant, and I believe he also played MLK as well in Selma. So, once again, our Black American descendants aren't even playing our characters. I guess the creator of this project was named Chad Feehan. And then a couple of the writers include Christina Alexandra Voros and Damian Marcano. So yeah, I haven't personally seen this, but maybe I might check it out. The one movie that, and I believe Isaiah Washington is a descendant, came out in 2022. It was called Corsicana. It's about a deputy sheriff, Bass Reeves, is reunited with his former partner and fugitive Sam Tanner. Together with a former Union sharpshooter, they face a race against time to track Jack Donner and his ruthless gang of killers. All right, so I haven't seen this one, but I'm definitely going to watch it. It's had mixed reviews, but I'm definitely going to check it out. Actually, I might check it out this weekend. And by the way, just to let everybody know on the live or who's going to listen to this, I actually picked up the book that I'm going to be reading prior to me even knowing that they actually did this movie or episodic called Lawmen Bass Reeves. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not that this episodic made me want to go and find out more about the great ancestor, U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. I actually wanted to find out about Bass Reeves before this. And I want to say shout out to Kim. To be honest with you, I knew about this project, but I totally forgot about it. She was like, "Oh yeah, remember Isaiah Washington?" I was like, "Snap, he did create this movie." So shout out to Isaiah Washington for stepping up. So definitely want to check that out, see how that one is. And yeah, I think it might be on Prime, so might check it out on Prime. Might be out on Stars too. Anyway, so let's briefly talk about the author that we're going to be reading from the book called Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. Shout out to Art T. Burton, the author, for writing this. I know I might reach out to this brother to see if we can actually get him on the platform. Never know, but we'll see. Might reach out to him. Anyway, Art Burton has appeared in 4 documentaries for the History Channel on cable television. He was a participant on BET's Teen Summit with Mario Van Peebles. This is actually according to his bio on his website. BET's Teen Summit with Mario Van Peebles for discussion on the movie Posse. In 2015, Burton appeared on Fox's Cable's Legends and Lies series episode titled The Real Lone Ranger, and was a participant in the AHC cable series Gunslingers episode on Bass Reeves. Burton spoke at the B.B. King Symposium at Mississippi Valley State University in the fall of 2018 on African American and Native American cultures. In July 2019, Burton was the keynote speaker at the 10th anniversary Bass Reeves Western History Conference in Muskogee, Oklahoma. He was recently named the historian for the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum of Fort Worth, Texas. He is passionate about the Wild West and continues to bring unsung heroes to light. And once again, that's Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves by Art Burton. And just want to remind everybody that actually tomorrow, we were actually going to do it today, but we postponed it till tomorrow, to watch Blacklisted, Volume 1, that was produced right here by even the Mass Media Group. So would appreciate everyone coming out and joining virtually to watch that. And I'll just remind everybody that it will be, I think we're going to be premiering it around 7 p.m. tomorrow, Pacific Standard. So come on, check that out. We're going to go deep diving into Hollywood. So this is volume 1. I don't know how many more volumes we're going to be doing, but definitely going to start on the history of Hollywood and the Black American experience within Hollywood. All right, so let's get into it. Planning not to be here too long because I know everybody, is obviously in their holiday, doing their holiday thing with family and friends. So for those, once again, listening, and for those who will be listening eventually on the replay, greatly appreciate it. So once again, this book is called Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves by Art T. Burton. So I want to be reading the introductions, about 10 or 11 pages. And the introduction is called The Lone Ranger and Other Stories. The book begins. Let's see. Yes, the introduction begins. Much of what we know today about Bass Reeves persisted in moral stories told by individuals and families whose origins are in Frontier, Oklahoma. I was able to collect a few of these stories from persons who currently reside in Oklahoma or have lived there in the past. The chapter will focus on these folk tales. After I finished writing Black, Red, and Deadly, I thought about the uncanny similarities between the Bass Reeves and the TV and radio character, the quote, Lone Ranger, end quote. Federal law mandated that deputy U.S. Marshals have at least one posse man with them whenever they went out in the field. Oftentimes, the men who assisted Reeves were Native Americans, like the character Tonto, who assisted the Lone Ranger. It was common practice for Reeves to work in disguise while trying to capture fugitives from justice, a la the Lone Ranger, who wore a black mask. Many times, the white settlers in the territory didn't know Reeves' name and called him the, quote, Black Marshal, end quote. Likewise, many didn't know the name of the Lone Ranger. For most African Americans during this time in American history, their dark faces became a black mask to white America. They became invisible. David Craig, a fellow member of Oklahombres, the Association for the Preservation of Lawmen and Outlaw History of the Indian Territory, and an employee of the Juvenile Criminal Court in Tulsa, told me a story about his family during one of my research trips to Oklahoma. Craig's grandfather, D.H. Brown, was from a Quaker family originally from Indiana. During the territorial era, the Browns settled in a sod house east of Kinsfisher in western Oklahoma, near the home of the mother of the Dalton brothers. The Dalton gang, Grattan, Bob, and Emmett, were lawmen who became train robbers in the Indian Territory. A story about Reeves remains in the family lore. According to D.H. Brown, Reeves showed up one day at their prairie dugout home with a posse of 2 white men and a Pawnee Indian on the hunt for the Dalton gang. Reeves hired D.H., who was about 14 at the time, to show Reeves and his posse where abandoned dugouts and caves were located near the Cimarron River. Before they went out on the hunt, the posse ate breakfast and Reeves paid for the meal with a silver dollar. The family told Reeves a silver dollar was way too much money for the meal. Reeves told them it was quite all right. He would get reimbursed later. After being out all night with DH and finding recently in campsites but no outlaws, Reeves paid DH with another silver dollar. We all know that the Lone Ranger's calling card was a silver bullet. Quite possibly Reeves was a silver dollar. This particular hunt for Reeves and his posse would have occurred after the Dalton gang robbed the Santa Fe train at Red Rock, Oklahoma Territory on June 1st, 1892. A large number of federal posses in the Indian and Oklahoma territories were put into the field to hunt for the Daltons after this robbery. In another interesting similarity to the Lone Ranger, Reeves may have ridden a white horse during one period of his career. Interjection, that's interesting. During the trial of Bass Reeves for murdering his cook, which will be discussed at length in Chapter 8, witnesses testified that the book threatened to shoot Reeves' gray horse. A gray horse can look anywhere from near black or near white, so it was possible that Reeves rode a horse that appeared to be white. Another possible connection, though tenuous, is that the original story of the Lone Ranger began on the radio in Detroit in 1933. Many of the fugitives arrested by Bass Reeves and later convicted at Fort Smith, Arkansas, were sent to the Detroit House of Corrections in Michigan. In his book, Black Pioneers, Images of the Black Experience on the North American Frontier in 1997, when it was written, author J. W. Ravage asked the questions. Quote, could Bass Reeves be the prototype for the Lone Ranger character? Question, end quote. I doubt we would be able to prove conclusively that Reeves is the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. We can, however, say unequivocally that Bass Reeves is the closest real person to resemble the fictional Lone Ranger on the American Western frontier of the 19th century. Interjection. Coincidence? Question mark. Let's continue. Many of the oral stories about Reeves are lost to time, but a few are still extant. Sandy Sturdivant, who grew up in the Osage Nation of Oklahoma as a small girl, heard the following 3 stories about Bass Reeves on the Oklahoma frontier. This one's called the dog story. Bass Reeves was known to be an animal lover. He cherished not only his own animals, but also other people's. Once up near Veneta in the Cherokee Nation, he came upon a man beating his hound dog. The dog had just had puppies and was apparently in somewhat poor condition. It was grated on Reeves' nerves that someone would beat an animal, let alone one that had just given birth. Reeves grabbed the stick from the man, who was a Cherokee Indian, and threatened him with bodily harm if he didn't stop thrashing the dog. Reeves told the man he would be back and then left. He returned with a box to collect all the puppies and the mother dog. He then tossed some coins at the dog beater and rode out, leading the mother dog along on a rope. Reeves took the animals to a friend somewhere up in that area whom he knew would take care of them. Several months later, after Reeves had conducted his business in the area, he passed by the same friend. took one of the now lively puppies, and headed home. Another story titled Skunk Story. It reads, on one occasion down in the Choctaw Nation near Robbers Cave, Bass Reeves and his posse had stopped for the night and made camp. They had been out rounding up felons and were on their way back to Fort Smith with a contingent of prisoners. After dinner, when everyone was asleep, a skunk crawled up around Reeves. Now, some skunks don't carry odor around themselves unless they are riled up. Well, when Bass awoke, the skunk was curled up, blissfully sleeping next to him. Wow. One of the prisoners woke up at the same time and proceeded to yell and carry on, trying to rouse the skunk into doing something obnoxious. Bass reached over, gently stroked the animal, and talked soothingly to it, whereupon it moseyed off without spraying anyone. The Reeves charm had won out again. Wow. Lynch party at Olaga. This is another story. It's titled Lynch Party at Olaga. Miss Sturtevant's grandmother told her this story, which occurred near Olaga, Cherokee Nation, the home of Will Rogers. Her grandmother and Bass Reeves was afraid of no man. It was like he had a destiny, and until that destiny was fulfilled, he was invincible. This is a belief of many Native Americans. Since Reeves operated in the Indian Territory, it is quite possible he adopted this line of thought. While out making his rounds, Reeves came across a lynch mob near one of the large cattle ranches. Evidently, a rustler had been caught and was about to be strung to a tree on the prairie by a group of cowboys. Without any thought to the danger he might be in, Reeves rode straight up to the lynch mob, cut the man down with his knife, and rode off with the man, without saying one word to anyone. Wow. It so astonished everyone that he was not pursued. Sturtevant's grandmother said Bass was probably seething under his breath. The following stories come from interviews Richard Fronterhouse conducted in Oklahoma during the late 1950s. The story is called Expert with Firearms. Bass Reeves' ability with firearms was legendary. He was ambidextrous. Wow. He was ambidextrous with pistol or rifle. Ambidextrous means you can, in his case, I guess, use your right and left with his rifle. That is pretty amazing. Reeves never carried silver or nickel-plated pistols with ivory or pearl handles or fancy rifles of any type. He preferred his firearms to be plain, ordinary, and inconspicuous. Reeves was possibly the greatest gunfighter of all the lawmen of the Old West. He could shoot so well and so consistently that he was barred regularly from competition in turkey shoots that were common to the local fairs and picnics of the Indian Territory. I was told that a turkey shoot in the Seminole Nation consisted of tying a turkey upside down on a clothesline, after which a rider with a rifle would attempt to shoot the head off the turkey while galloping at full speed down the line. Reeves' speed with a pistol has been likened to that of a, quote, Methodist preacher reaching for a platter of fried chicken during Sunday dinner at the deacon's house, end quote. It was fast and sure, with no wasted or unnecessary motion. Reeves could draw and shoot from the hip with great speed and accuracy if necessary, but he favored the slower, even more accurate method of taking his time, planning himself solidly and drawing, quote, a head as fine as a spider's web on a frosty morning, end quote. When he shot this way, quote, he could shoot the left hind leg off a contended fly sitting on a mule's ear at 100 yards and never ruffle a hair, end quote. But Reeves claimed to be the only fair with a rifle. This characteristic modesty belies the truth, for Reeves was truly an expert with a rifle. For example, he once rode over the crest of a rise, way out on the fringes of the Kiowana Comanche country, and interrupted 6 wolves as they were in the process of pulling down a steer, shooting at the wolves from the back of his horse with his Winchester rifle, causing them to scatter in all directions. He killed 6 with 8 shots. Wow. True, he broke one wolf's leg and gut shot another, thus missing a clean 1-shot kill. But he did stop them both, using a second shot only to end their suffering. 8 shots for any 6 kills that are moving targets is fine shooting in any man's language. All right, so the next story is chapter Superhuman Strength. Just a little interjection. By the way, this is a physical book that I am reading. It's a physical book. I'm not sure if there's like a Kindle version out there, but if anyone is interested in getting this book, I'm sure it's somewhere on Amazon or somewhere online to get it via digital. But yeah, I do have a physical copy of this book that I'm reading from. All right, so let's continue. This story is called Superhuman Strength. Reeves' physical strength was also legendary in the territory. Once, while riding in the southern portion of the Chickasaw Nation, Reeves came upon some cowboys attempting to extract a full-grown steer from one of the bogs along Mud Creek, which emptied into the Red River. The cowboys had roped the steer and were attempting to bodily drag it back to solid ground using their horses. Several ropes had broken under this strain. The steer was big and was buried so deep in the bog that only its head and upper back were visible. Its eyes rolled back into its head. Its neck had been pulled and stretched until its tongue lolled out of its mouth into the mud and slime of the bog. And its windpipe was so restricted by the ropes that its breath was only an occasional labored, rasping wheeze. In fact, the cowboys were almost ready to give him up as lost. They were seriously considering riding off and leaving the steer where they found him, with a bullet in his brain to soothe their conscience and mark their defeat. Bass rode up, watched for a few minutes, and grunted his dissatisfaction. Then, stepping down from his horse, he began to strip off his clothes. Without saying a word, he stepped into the bog and began to work his way out to the trapped steer. First, he removed all the ropes so that the steer could breathe again. Then, grabbing the steer by the horns, he began to lift and pull, all the while talking in a low, steady voice to the steer. He pulled and heaved and lifted and grunted under the strain until he sank into the mud almost to his waist before the cowboys could detect the first progress in moving the steer. Stopping to catch his breath, he wiped his sweating, muddy hands dry on the back of the steer and stooped to lift and pull again. Ever so slowly, the steer was lifted until the lethal suction of the bog holding the 4 quarters of the steer was broken. Reeves then moved to the steer's flank and began the torturous process again. By this time, the steer had regained its breath and began its first attempts to help itself. These attempts were feeble at first, but grew stronger with each great sucking breath. Reeves repeated this process of lifting and pulling, first at the steer's head and then at its flank, until the steer, with great convulsive twists and turns, was able to lunge toward solid ground under his own power. Upon reaching solid ground, the steer, without so much as a glance at its savior, wobbled off into the brush and disappeared, bawling its triumph for all the Chickasaw Nation to hear. Reeves waded, W-A-D-E-D, out of the mud, scraped himself as clean as he could with the flat of his hands, stuffed his clothes into his saddlebags, mounted his horse, and rode off stark naked while mumbling something about, quote, damned dumb cowboys, end quote. He rode off without saying a word to any of the dumbstruck cowboys, even though he had been there for almost a full hour. One of the most fascinating stories I collected concerning Bass Reeves came from a retired Muskogee, Oklahoma schoolteacher. Alice Hendrickson told me a story in the summer of 2001 after I gave a talk at the Three Rivers Museum. During Miss Hendrickson's senior year at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville in 1959, she took a folklore class with Professor Mary Celestia? C-E-L-E-S-T-I-A? Celestia? Professor Mary Celestia Parlor. The professor had the students in the class research and find native folk songs. Worried that she might fail the assignment and not be able to maintain her straight A average for graduation, Miss Hendrickson contacted her parents, who lived in Muskogee, and told them about Professor Parler's assignment. They advised her to contact an elderly white man named Stewart who sang local folk songs. When Miss Hendrickson visited Mr. Stewart at his home near downtown Muskogee, he was glad to sing a number of folk songs for her. One of the songs he remembered, due to his content, concerned Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. Mr. Stewart told her he had worked with Bass Reeves and that Bass Reeves was a legendary black lawman. Miss Hendrickson said that though she had grown up in eastern Oklahoma, she had never heard of such a man. Professor Parler was so happy with the songs Miss Hendrickson had gathered that not only did she give Miss Hendrickson an A for the class, but she had Mr. Stewart record a number of folk songs. Many of the folk songs that Mary Parler recorded have been archived in the University of Arkansas Library at Fayetteville, but the Bass Reeves songs has not yet been located. The main impediment is that the title of the song is not known. The late Hortense Love, a noted African-American vocalist and choir director in Chicago, told me she was originally from Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that her grandfather was a Creek Indian and very good friends with Bass Reeves. Miss Love said she was told that whenever Reeves was preparing to go into a gunfight, he would sing softly to himself. When others nearby heard Reeves softly break into song, they knew it was time to take cover, for Reeves meant business. This book documents the law enforcement career of the man known in his day as the, quote, invincible marshal, end quote. It begins with what I have been able to discover about his early life before the Civil War and takes us through the tumultuous frontier years when Bass Reeves became a legend. We end after the turn of the 20th century as Oklahoma becomes a state. While Bass Reeves continues to work until nearly the end of his life, along the way, I conclude other oral stories that fit into the chronological sequence of the amazing life of Bass Reeves. All right. So that was actually, man, my bad. That was actually the first chapter, called The Lone Ranger and Other Stories. Very interesting. All right. I totally skipped over the introduction. My bad. Let's see. Where we at? 37. All right. I'm just gonna read a few pages of this. So I want to try to get out of here in about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna read a few pages of the introduction. So that was chapter 1. I'm gonna read a few pages of the introduction, and then we're gonna get out of here. It's totally my bad. I was just like, why are we talking about the Lone Ranger? But anyway, I guess we know a little bit about something about possibly Bass Reeves' influence on the Lone Ranger concept. All right, so let's quickly go over a few pages on the introduction, and we'll get out of here. Introduction: Uncovering the history of Black deputy U.S. Marshals. The research on Bass Reeves has not been easy to obtain. One of the first responses I received from a local town historical society in Oklahoma after inquiring about Reeves was, quote, "I am sorry we didn't keep Black people's history," end quote. Well, we know how that one goes. Interjection. Let's continue. Due to the discriminatory practices in the 20th century, much African American history was not retained in local towns of the South or Southwest. Information that could be located on Reeves was likely a rare jewel. This book is part and parcel of a journey I have been on for the past 20 years, back to the era of the American Wild Wild West. My first book, Black, Red, and Deadly, Black and Indian Gunfighters of the Indian Territory, 1870 to 1907, published in 1991, was the first book to highlight exclusively the exploits of Black and Indian outlaws and lawmen of the Western frontier. My inspiration for the book was the story of Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. The longest chapter in Black, Red, and Deadly is on Reeves, and initially I felt there wasn't too much more I could be able to research on his career. Numerous people who read my book told me they felt Reeves needed a book of his own. After some trepidation, I decided to see how much more material on Reeves might be available. After realizing that many of his federal criminal court cases were available in the National Archives, I decided that I would be able to use this material as a foundation for a book on Reeves. Further research uncovered more newspaper articles from the Indian Territory and oral stories from individuals in Oklahoma and around the country. In this book, you will find direct testimony from witnesses, defendants, and Reeves himself in various criminal cases. How Reeves made an arrest is often not apparent in the criminal case document. We only know this information if it was not available in the case report, from newspaper stories or oral accounts. I am sure the most exciting aspect of his relationship with a desperado was the arrest. When this information is available, I have included it in the text. Many of Reeves' exploits in subduing criminals and who they were we will never know. My first book generated national interest in Bass Reeves for the first time in history. Hollywood became interested in the Bass Reeves story, and producers and actors who considered development projects included Susan DePass, Louis Gossett, Don Johnson, Maury Povich, and Morgan Freeman. As of this date, these projects have not come to fruition. In the spring of 2002, Marlon Edwards produced a small-budget independent movie about Bass Reeves in Oklahoma titled The Black Marshal. Reeves was also featured in a docudrama entitled It Took Brave Men, Deputy U.S. Marshals of Fort Smith, produced by the Fort Smith National Historic Site, National Park Service. He was also briefly discussed in a documentary produced by the History Channel for cable television on the history of the U.S. Marshal Service. Reeves has been featured in several yearly calendars that are distributed nationally. The most prominent publication was the 365 Days of Black History calendar for 2001, in which Reeves was the highlighted personality for the month of February. Bass Reeves was also included in the Lawman of the Old West card game produced by U.S. Games System, where his image is shown with Wild Bill Hickok on the cover of the box. His image was also included in the historical wall map titled The American West, along with dozens of other frontier heroes and heroines, that was produced by White Mountain Puzzles in 1996. Recently, Bass Reeves was included in several fictional books in a supporting role or was mentioned in works such as Zeke and Ned by Larry McNerney and Diana Osana. That was published by Pocket Books in 1997. Reeves appears in nonfiction books as well. He is given a passing glance in The Taming of the West, Age of the Gunfighter by Joseph G. Rosa. That's published by Salamander Books in 1993. The Time Life books, African Americans, Voices of Triumph, Perseverance in 1993, includes a brief biography on Reeves. There were chapters on Reeves in Best of the West by Bill O'Neill, Publications International, 1997, and Black Profiles and Courage by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Alan Steinberg. That's William Merrill in 1996. In his book, Lawmen of the Old West, published by Republic of Texas Press in 2000, Texas author Dale Kane writes that of the 14 diverse lawmen of the Old West chronicled in the book, quote, Bass Reeves was perhaps the greatest good guy of them all. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and actually stop there. Yes, I'm definitely going to continue reading this book when I have time. This is a good read. I don't know, maybe I'll continue the introduction at a later time just to get that done. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate your time. Once again, tomorrow we're going to be premiering Blacklisted Volume 1 right here on the In the Mass Media Group. Yeah, we're going to go a deep dive into Hollywood, family. Deep dive. If we have a chance tomorrow, once again, it's scheduled for 7 o'clock. We actually might do another broadcast just to get some things off our chest regarding Hollywood. I don't know, maybe, and if anybody's interested, we might, open the live stream for some people to come on if y'all want to. But anyway, thanks once again. If you have a chance, as always, would really appreciate your support. Shop on Amazon, go to our affiliate link. Yeah, I think Black Friday's tomorrow, so shop away, and then you can also support In the Mass Media Group. It is free, so please don't forget to do that. Sundays, right here. In the Mass Media Group, Road to Reparations community show. Sundays at 10 a.m. Once again, we are taking this Sunday off, but hopefully we should be back the following Sunday. So definitely come check that out. And once again, we were reading from the book Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves, written by Art T. Burton. So on that note, everyone have a wonderful holiday today, however you celebrate, or you maybe not celebrate this day due to the history of the United States. But if you do, be safe, be blessed, and at minimum, let's be thankful for the life that we do have and the others that surround us. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, We give all praises to our good ancestor, Bass Reeves, on this day, a great Black American freedman hero. Shout out to everyone. Have a good one. And on that note, y'all, peace and, as we say, reparations.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but freed people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have Black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and Black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations.
I had no idea that church I was running by every day was something my grandfather established.
This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total Black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Overnight, it's like, oh, it's no longer the quarters, now it's Lincoln Heights. Oh, so now we get to use Abraham Lincoln for our name. And you think about all the other people that they could have used, but they picked Lincoln. And I think that's sort of stereotypical of what they do.
There wasn't any Black restaurants. As far as Black business in weed, it wasn't none.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically Black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Why has it been easier for other groups than us?
Because of anti-Black hatred.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR room, don't tune in.